Well, we will go ahead and get started. It's 7 o'clock. Let me take care of our participants and we get started. So thank you. I think we are good to go and connected live. So thank you all for being here today. I am noticing that I'm a little blurry, so I will have that resolved next week. But we are at the hour, so we will go ahead and get started with our presentation today. And thank you for subscribing, joining the YouTube channel, and going on this journey with us to celebrate our forgotten spaces and to restore our historic main streets, one building at a time. I'm Dr. V. Brooks Dunbar. I am the founder and investor in the new LaVilla, located here in Jacksonville, Florida. And I am going on this journey with you to help everyone out there who is experiencing fundraising campaigns and would like to know more about fundraising or just interested in understanding the larger community of investing, crowdfunding, grant writing, etc., will benefit from these presentations. This is our third iteration, and we will continue having these fundraising workshops through December 31st, which is when the campaign for the new LaVilla will close out. Our outline for today is to go over why we're here, and I just expressed a little bit of why we're here. I remembered some time ago when I used to have workshops for business members that I would always post any open grant opportunities that I found. And I realized that more people would attend when they found out that I was doing the research for them. So I will start these conversations with any open grants that I find in between the weeks of the presentation and just share them out. And wish you all the best of luck in winning and being successful with applying for grants. Then we'll talk a little bit about the review from the last two presentations, talk a little bit about the planning modules and then setting up a fundraising goal. And then we'll get into creating our donor activities map and then wrap up with questions, any questions that anyone have. So I am not monitoring comments and I'm not monitoring in real time any chat today. I think we're good on that today in terms of the Facebook post. So what I do, however, is the following week we'll review any questions from the previous session and we'll answer any questions that were presented then. So I will continue to list those and follow up with those questions as well. And so the purpose of these workshops and the purpose of the New LaVilla Fundraising School is to break down and discuss the fundamentals of fundraising and putting everything on the table from my 10 plus years of experience, more than 50% success rate with fundraising and grant writing, more than 50 million raised at the university level, at the private nonprofit level, and for entrepreneurs nationwide as well. And so these are some of the areas that we will talk about. Today, we're talking about specifically the donor cultivation, prospecting, and management process. That is a big deal. That will make or break you when it comes to whether you're going to be successful or not. Right now, in the New LaVilla phase, we are in our soft, talking to people, making presentations. We are in that pre-fundraising phase where we are getting the word out. This is part of that, getting the word out about the project Even wearing my shirt today, if everyone can see, we have our New LaVilla, Jacksonville, established in 1866 shirts with our Buffalo soldiers the people who were the original founders of LaVilla were Union soldiers. And so we're going to start to tell that story as well. Again, just building that community in advance so that they understand fully what this is about and fully the value of it, and would hopefully be inclined to support the project and support the raise. And we are building out the last pieces, have to update the Q&A from our previous raise and update the benefits of giving. So we'll do that as well. And I'll touch on our new platform, Give Butter, a little bit today also. So here's some open grants. I was ranting a little bit so that you all can have a look at these and take a screenshot. And the Social Impact Grant Challenge, that one has a August 30th deadline. So that is this week. So I just wanted to put that out there. It is for nonprofits only. It is affiliated with the TD Jakes Foundation. So that is the link to apply there. So I talk about nonprofits, for-profit entrepreneurs and initiatives for them, as well as our traditional, individual, state, federal, local grant opportunities. The Intuit Ideas Small Business Accelerator just opened up their next cycle for, I believe, their fourth cohort. That is for-profit businesses, so mix it up a little bit here. And the application is now open. It opened this month, recently, as a matter of fact, because I think I checked 2 weeks ago and it was still closed. So it opened this month. There is no deadline. It will stay open on a rolling basis. You have to be located in a specific city, so it is limited by location. There is veterans cohort, however, so you can participate in the veterans cohort if you're a veteran, no matter where you're located. So that application is open. I always recommend that you apply early, don't wait, don't delay. And that one has a 5,000, well, sometimes they change, but in the past, there was a monetary grant awarded in addition to some smaller technology grants, transportation grants, et cetera, throughout the 12-month program. So that program is a 12-month program. And then I included our federal grants portal. This is one that I would be on quite a bit. Registered, you have to register to do business with the federal government. You must be registered in sam.gov. And once you're registered in sam.gov, connected to sam.gov and the grants.gov portal, you're able to search government grants, opportunities, and apply for federal funding for your organization as well. Typically, the nonprofit space is where the federal grants overwhelmingly lie, but I believe in terms of research opportunities or research initiatives, there may sometimes be a nuance in terms of, working with a nonprofit if you're not a nonprofit agency. So just look at those and see where your sweet spot lies. So those are the open grants for today. Next week, I'll have some more opportunities available as well. And Intuit, and just, if you're on that page for Intuit has several opportunities. I think one is a green opportunity and another one is a climate grant opportunity. So just look around on their website. Their corporate social responsibility policy is pretty robust. So they have a great program. All right. So in terms of review, last week we talked about planning and we went through these 5 key steps. We talked about who are we planning for and the different fundraising types. And if you would like to go back and review that presentation, by all means do review that one to catch up. We also talked about how do you start with making your case for support. for getting an organized campaign up and running. And so that was last week. So episode number 2 went a little deeper into putting your timeline and strategy and team in place. Okay. This particular raise that I am working on is this is an example of our theme. We are at the new LaVilla, looking at how we can restore our forgotten spaces, one building at a time, starting with the new LaVilla and expanding to other cities nationwide who have our forgotten historic Black commercial corridors that are sitting now, many of them, in decline. So we want to bring back these commercial centers and create the economic engine and the economic impact that they will bring to the broader economy. So everybody gets to support and participate. This cause is, yes, impact investment. Impact investment is that there is a value or a good or a social cause attached to it at the end of the day. The cases for support, there are 5 key pillars that we're following, and that is the economic development and job creation opportunities, the opportunity to restore and preserve a historic landmark. This used to be the Will Hotel. In as early as 1917, Miss Fannie Harvey, an entrepreneur and proprietress, opened up the Will Hotel. She operated the hotel upstairs in a 2-story building, and downstairs was the commercial facing space, which was a grocery store, merchant store. And the history around that, we're going to go into a little deeper as well, because it's such a fascinating story about how LaVilla was founded by former Union soldiers, how it became this center of music, culture, art, and then eventually how it went into decline. It is the birthplace of James Weldon Johnson. He wrote Lift Every Voice and Sing. Many people know that as the Negro National Anthem during the time. And he was also president of Old Stanton High School. So amazing, rich history here in Jacksonville that is only now becoming celebrated with the addition of the Heritage Trail walks, the Lift Every Voice and Sing Park. So a lot of stuff going on. The new LaVilla is perfectly centered in between all of that. So we're excited to be on a main street, the old historic main street, and all of the activities that are coming back to the location. So this is an entrepreneurship center. The purpose is to celebrate the fact that this was located in this spot was more than 600 small local businesses who were thriving. And we're talking about wealth building, legacy building, financial literacy, financial education. So we do have a blog at New LaVilla, the newlavilla.com/blog, that talks about individuals who created fortunes in the past, well before the civil rights movement, but what happened to that wealth, so that we can learn and put in place the best practices to support all of the entrepreneurs that we're looking to support. This is about pride and cultural representation, and it's also about access and community building. So that is our case for support with the New LaVilla, and you can absolutely read more at thenewlavilla.com. So today's discussion, we're focusing specifically on donor relations, prospecting, cultivation, and management. This is such a critical piece, and this matters when it comes to if you're going to hit your goal or not. Currently, we are in the prospecting piece. Prospecting is just getting the information out there and seeing who it resonates with. So on the previous slide, I looked at, and we're looking at, who does this appeal to? So impact investors, economic and community advocates, historians, and museum patrons. Because even though museums are nonprofit, they usually support their own agency or organization, the donors that surround themselves with those type of projects will more than likely be willing to give one-time donations to a specific timed initiative where it's not a recurring initiative. Typically, the annual giving and annual gift campaigns are the campaigns where they support their own. That is the annual fundraising target. Usually it happens at the end of the year where they are raising for their budget for the next year. And so you absolutely want to support that if you're a member of an organization. But if there's a one-time ask or a one-time campaign, the new LaVilla would fall within that space, but it still has and meets all of the criteria for what they care about and what they believe in, which is history and restoration and preservation. So this grid here, the upside down grid, is where we touched on how do you build out the fundraising team, how many people should be on your fundraising team, and the different levels of fundraising teams. So we have our seasoned expert donors who are attached to people with wealth. They're at that top tier, more likely team one. And then the individual donors who just have a heart and a desire and want to become involved and learn typically would be team five. And those are the people that you capture with the wider net from what we're doing today, which is getting the information out and asking for them if they have an interest to give. The larger donors will go on this grid that is built out. So this is donor mapping that is built out based on what we think their capacity or potential to give is. And so what that would look like is researching that donor. So you're going to research these individual prospects who can give 5,000, 10,000, 20,000 and up. Our cap in the previous raise was 50,000. For this particular raise, we're looking at 500, 1,000, and 10,000 max because we're only raising $500,000. So the ask is going to be in smaller denominations. But if there is that donor who says, you know what, we really love this, we want to give more, what we will do is build out a custom, strategy and benefits plan for them. And that is absolutely doable. So if there's an individual who says, I would like to give $100,000, and what could that look like in terms of a return or benefits or incentives, then we make that custom plan for them. The one example of an individual that was born here in Jacksonville and who was involved with an enormous amount of philanthropy, left, for example, a part of her wealth with the local community foundation. So most of the very large donors would be involved with or associated in some way with your local community foundations. So if you would look into your community foundations, you want to start to prospect out what types of funds are within those foundations, whether it's family funds or individuals who give on a regular basis. That is where you're going to start to see a pattern around who these individuals are and who they're connected to. So that is how you start to look at those higher level donor prospects. For everyone else, the new donor prospects who are out there, but you don't know them yet, this is where having programs, going out and speaking to community groups and organizations, building your champions, we talked about that last week, to also look into their networks and spread out and cast a wider net is also where this work would begin. So that team member who's leader of team 1 through 5 is also leading the raise amount for that category. So even though, for example, team 4 has here $1,000, it means that is what they're targeting for each donor at that level. But the max that you want to raise at that level, for example, would be Team Force responsible for raising $50,000. So they're responsible for finding 50 donors who will give approximately $1,000 each, or they may have a list where there's, more um, on that list who are maybe 500 and 1,000 donors, but that number and the estimated amount that the average give will be should total Team One's expected raise. And it is absolutely critical that the champions, who are the team leaders, um, have experience with fundraising already, and that they also have some level of community connection or relation. So, what that could look like is an individual who's responsible for raising um, $50,000 at $500 each or $1,000 each could be a member of some larger groups or organizations where they can go back to that larger donor, larger membership and ask. But that membership has to have some of those categories of what we talked about before of appeal. They have to fall somewhere within impact investing interests, economic community advocate interests, historian, museum patrons interests. So one example is that we are looking at the Smithsonian Museum affiliates and looking at, okay, who within our regional sphere can we look at to reach out to and help us to build out and cast this wide net for the 50 individuals that we're looking for. And so everything is absolutely mapped out in detail so that the full raise is accounted for plus some, so that if you fall short, you're still within your raise range. Because when you're talking about raising, you're also talking about platforms and the cost of raising. And there's a huge cost of raising. When I was raising more than 10 years ago, working with at the state level, there were nonprofit organizations out there who were giving up 30% of their raise to organizations who were raising on their behalf because they had such a large list. I'm sure that has changed quite a bit now. Most recently, I've just been involved with grant writing and now crowdfunding. But dealing with those companies who are professional fundraisers can be expensive. They do take a good chunk of the raise. And so just be careful about what that could look like and who is supporting you in that raise. But they do raise quite a bit of money, a lot of them, because their lists are so very large. And when I say list, I mean their email list, their prospect list, because they've been doing it and combining all of these people together. And they continue to build and outsource that list. So start with your champions, then target those affinity groups and their volunteers and their organizations. And that is how you start to map out with your fundraising team, how are you going to reach your target? How many individuals do you need to ask? And at what levels and what amounts do you need to ask? And you want to have those check-in meetings weekly, on a regular basis, depending on how far out that campaign is. Like for now, for this campaign, which is getting ready to launch live, September 1 is our target. Then our champions, the 20 ambassadors that we're looking at, we want to make sure that we're connecting every single week to update each other on the goals. And so that is how that works in your fundraiser, your fundraising lead is the person who's responsible for making sure that everybody's engaged and connected. And if one team is struggling a bit, what is the solution to tweak and refine and reset every single week? Because it's so very important that we hit our targets and we don't leave any stone unturned, and that we do not leave challenges resolved. So I can give you an example of a challenge right now. A challenge right now is, even though prospects have pledged, they don't necessarily give in that moment. So you have the pledges, but the pledges only become real when they actually make the donation. And so getting into a rhythm with following up, calling, um, and reminding is something that we're going to have to assign. And I'm getting ready to assign someone to do that, to follow up and call, because we want to make sure that the pledges are showing up sooner than later, so that people who are also interested can see that there's movement, that there's momentum. So the pledge has to be is great, but the bird in hand has to be the actual donation is made. And that's what we're looking at. So think about the follow-ups and the pledges and who's going to manage the pledges separate from the prospecting and cultivation process. Okay, so speaking of cultivation process, the cultivation process has a shelf life. And so for our first raise, we had several individuals who were interested in at the 10,000 level, for example. Actually, it was a 10,000 level. And so what was happening is the information was out there, but we realized our slide deck was, I can't remember, 30 or so pages. Our pitch was 45 minutes. Oops, just too much information, too much information. And so by the time they would schedule their one-on-one after going through a presentation and making the call, it was starting over, because the information and the clarity around the give, and we were also going through an SEC raise, regulation CF. So we also had to make sure that the return that we were projecting, that we had these disclaimers. We could not say with certainty because that's against the regulation. And so we had to continuously just rephrase, reposition, communicate out with more clarity and more certainty without making any promises. And so when you're dealing with new people who are new to fundraising, that language it's I would be concerned with that language, but that's the language that Regulation CF asks you to use, because nothing is guaranteed. What you're giving and what you're donating towards is an impact investing campaign that will have a longer return timeline than a typical investment in a business or stocks or something like that, where the return can boost up fairly quickly. In this particular case, we also had hotels on the platform, and so the hotels were not were not impact projects. They were investment projects. So the return on getting that hotel open sooner than later is a different timeline than a fully built out, renovated historic landmark project. It's just simply a longer timeline. So understanding the differences there was a huge lesson learned. And I am grateful for, for having that run, that opportunity to learn in real time, just like we're learning in real time today, because it's the best food for thought that you can actually have, because you know what you need to do at this point. And so that's why we have this new platform, the flexibility in giving, because we were restricted in terms of what people could give. And now we have more flexibility, and it feels like a true impact investing community building campaign. And so when you're looking at your affinity group and volunteers, it's much easier to communicate out exactly what it is we're doing without having all the legal language to precede it before we even get into the opportunity here that is so tremendous. Okay. So that is how we look at building a fundraising team, building out the different fundraising levels, the individuals and the types of individuals that need to be on a prospecting list. And then the cultivation list, the shelf life for cultivation will be longer for others, shorter for some as well. The strategy for cultivation is shorter when you have the right team leader on each team, because these are people that they know directly or people within their sphere of influence where they can connect to the right person or connect to the person who give that soft introduction to make the case. So for example, when I was working at the university level, working to help raise for a new law school development, there was no existing law school program, but there were people who had graduated from this university who had to go elsewhere to get a law degree because they did not have one at this institution. Our immediate goal and our immediate targets, of course, were those who had the closest affinity, the graduates, and then within those graduates who went on to get law degrees. That's the second level. And then of those who went on to get law degrees, who had become extremely successful. Okay, so just think about that pillar, who can give and the different levels of giving there. Now, you also, within this huge community, had family members, other champions and supporters of those individuals that we needed to identify. And so you identify those then by going into different professional groups, organizations, people who worked at, in particular companies, or who had particular roles. So for example, a particular role is a person who is the legal counsel for one of the largest organizations in the local area, or someone who did pro bono work at a legal clinic. And so the attorneys associations, of course, were major, but also in the smaller groups of individuals who could give, you're looking at clerks, you're looking at mediator, you're looking at that whole community of the legal profession and who would be willing to support a capital campaign in this particular case to build this particular law school. And so that is what we were involved in. And so that's how you look at the entire sphere. So think about and pause for a moment, pause this recording for a moment, and just map out and think about who that could be for your campaign. When I think about the new LaVilla, we are absolutely starting with anyone who is a graduate of Old Stanton High School down the street, anyone who is involved or was involved or has had family who lived in LaVilla, who grew up there, who had to leave because of the roads coming through it and a disruption in LaVilla, who understood and value, the history that was created here through the aspect of these are former Union soldiers, and the history and the culture is tied into this. The Writers Project came through here. Just so much that was happening in LaVilla at that time. And the families, for the most part, are still here and are doing quite well, and who drive down the street every day and see the vacant buildings and who want this area to come back and thrive. And now that there's momentum there, they absolutely want to be a part of that. They absolutely want to be a part of that. The time spent to speak to all of them can be taxing. And so that's where your team leaders will come in and help you with that as well. And then you think about okay, what would be maybe some potential challenges? One potential challenge that we know is coming up is that Old Stanton High School, it has been sitting forever, and there's a foundation, and that foundation is going to start to look at how they can restore Old Stanton. If you look at the video that we have on the web here at YouTube and on the website and the Facebook page at thenewlavilla.com, you will see the video of the ballerina dancing within the old building. One is Stanton and one is ours. And so that is the interesting thing about that wonderful short piece that was created to celebrate LaVilla's history, but also to bring attention to the fact that there are some beautiful buildings, beautiful spaces here, and they're sitting vacant. And so why not bring life back into these spaces? So I hope you look at the video as well. Okay, so let's talk about now donor tracking tools. And so this has everything to do with who's tracking what and where those responsibilities are and what areas are we tracking. And by areas that we're tracking, the areas of the type of cause that we're putting out there. So in some cases, we're talking about economic development. Some cases, we're talking about history, impact investing, and museums. And so those are the areas that we're tracking. Which one is giving us the most traction and return, so to speak, so that we can make a decision around, do we want to put more effort into engaging at a higher level through this lens, while also managing the other lenses that we're tracking. Okay, and who's tracking that? So typically who's tracking the different themes or causes are still the same team members, but on that team, you also have a mixture or volunteers assigned based on the affinities, right? I will say that the size of a successful fundraising team for a $500,000 raise, 3 per team, 15, we are going for 20 ambassadors per month. And the reason that we're rolling that out is because of time, of course, but also because we want to refresh the ambassadors as well, so that when the teams start feeling, okay, we've tapped this out, this has run its course, let's get a fresh person in there to reignite, follow up on those, pledges that haven't come in, get a new voice, some new energy around that, but also look at, okay, through fresh pair of eyes and a fresh perspective, what other opportunities are there? I am so very excited. So one of the opportunities that you have to always consider, and I talked about this before in episode 1, is about, is there an opportunity here for fee for service? So, for example, if you donate, one of the benefits is that you get this LaVilla Buffalo Soldiers shirt. But in terms of a legacy gift, something that is a collectible item, we're still exploring that, still excited, still exploring. The timeline for that may be a little bit longer. So we're looking at, okay, if we pre-sell and attach this to a specific donor level, will that get us there? And so today, if you signed up for the newsletter on our website, then you saw the number that we're looking at, the 5K 100. So 5K 100 means we're looking for 5,000 people who will give $100 on average. 5,000, that's a lot of people, but we're thinking that this legacy gift may do it for us. And we're going to attach that legacy gift to the larger membership organizations. And so we're looking at groups with memberships of 5,000 minimum and up, 50,000 members, et cetera. So what can that look like? So you want to think about that as well in terms of incentivizing your raise as well, and making it something that is more memorable and valuable based on having a limited access to some really unique things. And that's how you trade off a fee for service. You're selling something, but the value is much greater than just that actual thing. Okay. So pause and just think that through. I would say just give yourself 10 minutes, 15 minutes just to map out what that could potentially look like for you. Who could be your team leads or ambassadors? What could be the different fundraising levels that each is responsible for? What individuals, groups, organizations, memberships can you identify based on your different, again, groups of appeal? Okay, your cases for support. Okay, so I want to wrap up. Okay, it's not, we're doing good. 20 minutes with donor tracking tools. Okay, so this is so highly critical that you have a great platform to track. Before, we were on a great platform. It was a crowdfunding platform. And when we're talking about community, and I started to recognize this again as we're going through the campaign, that when you're talking about an impact investing sort of community building campaign where you're inviting the community to come in and have a sense of equity and ownership in the project, the page has to speak more so to bringing the people together, like celebrating who's there, who's given, showing their faces, having them comment, tag, etc. And with the previous platform, it was just a very formal platform, very regulated, formal platform. With this new platform that we have, and so our donor tracking platform is Give Butter. And what I will more than likely do next week is to go into this Give Butter platform a little bit more. And honestly, the reason I'm not doing it now is because I don't want to get out of this screen and lose you. so and so I'm going to practice making sure that I don't drop you because, well, it wasn't that I dropped another call. It was I couldn't get the sound for some reason, and I don't know what the glitch is, and I like to troubleshoot before I do something again. And so for today, I want you just to look at this platform. I think it's givebutter.com. And I want you to go ahead and register. You do not have to give to register. I just want you to register and I want you to look at it and get comfortable with it. Now, I'm not endorsing Give Butter. I'm not endorsing any platform, but I want you to look at it and get a good feel of how donor management works so that we can start to walk through this and how it looks. And also, YouTube has some workshops that people have already put out. Give Butter, if you go to their help space, Give Butter has some workshops as well about how to use this platform. Now, there's decisions that you have to make when you're using donor platforms. And the biggest one for most nonprofits, of course, is that there are fees. There are going to be fees. You cannot hide from fees. What some have done, like Give Butter have done, is they put in, the option for the person giving the donation to help pay for or offset the cost of the fees. And so this is one of those platforms as well. Now, let me say also that the new LaVilla is not a 501c3. The new LaVilla is an LLC. The new LaVilla in our previous campaign offered equity in the building. When you go into this platform and the levels, and that was because we're starting at 10,000 and up. When you go in at this, for this platform, you can see we're starting at 100,000. There's a 5,000 pledge. There's like a couple, some pledges in there. And this is a screenshot, so I can't scroll, but there are some pledges in there. And so far, we have $800 in hand, right? So remember, pledges are different. Cash in hand is golden. And so we have to continue to follow up to make sure that those pledges will be met. And those pledges will be met because I know them. And so the sign up, just become, I think you can just sign up or register or something like that. And just follow, because that's something that I would do if it, well, I wouldn't, I would give and then still follow. Um, because again, as I said in the previous one, usually people who are in the space of fundraising are givers anyway, they understand this process. And so I would give anyway, but then just follow and decide if I want to give more. So I talked about the ladies, the very wealthy donors we used to get who would give us something, a very small amount, just to see how we behave. And then they would come back around if they, liked the way they were treated or liked how their money was used initially. Then they would come back around and give us what we really asked for. And so it's the same concept. You want to get to know the organization sometime and see how they manage themselves and manage the communication. That's important. Manage the communication well. That is part of the cultivation process, is that you keep individuals looped in and well aware of how the campaign is going and what the activities are. And so that team of 15 and the volunteers, everyone is absolutely critical and essential to get this raise done. It is, it can be a full-time experience. So you want to have as many people as possible on board to make it as pleasant, as fun, as impactful as it's promised to be for everyone. So sign up for this, go to the help videos, but also look at comps. So you can just put into one of the AI platforms, fundraising platforms that are the least expensive to use, and just start the learning curve with that. There's another one that my Jazz Society uses, Zeffy, Zeffy. That platform is another free platform, and I'm saying free in terms, and I think that one actually has the lowest. I think it may be free all the way around. But you do get the option to, have the donor offset the fees. Here, I believe it's 6%. It's 3% for the credit card transaction, and then 3% for the page management, depending on the level that you purchased. And so there is a free level, but then when you get into workflow management and donor management, you want to invest in the donor management tools. Again, you want the donor to feel as if they're seen and heard, and that their donation is appreciated and that they're respected. So one of the reasons for starting out kind of in a slow, quiet phase is to kind of get that operating rhythm in place. The operating rhythm is, what are you going to do every single day and rinse and repeat? What systems are you going to have every single day and rinse and repeat, so that that flow, that operating rhythm is smooth and you know who's doing what and when they're doing it, and there's checks and balances there. So this is what we're going to touch on a little bit more next week when I figure out how to share the screen without having any glitches or problems like that. All right. And I should check to see if I don't believe there are any questions. Okay. Okay, great. All right, so I'm going to end a little early tonight since I don't have any questions, or actually I can't see any questions. And so what I would love for you all to do today after this session is to register for our newsletter if you haven't already. Share this video, share the newsletter that came out today that talks about, mentioned our ambassadors and the 5K 100 campaign strategy, campaign plan that we have in place. Make it real easy, very simple. That's our target number. I would love it if you would follow us on social media. We have kicked off our TikTok platform, so we're sharing snippets of this on TikTok every single week. Um, Beauty is doing a great job. Her name is Beauty, and she is beautiful, and she's doing a great job. And we just want to build this community around this because this is not the end. We want to make sure that we start to look at our other, um, forgotten spaces, forgotten communities. I continue to mention Bowley because um, one of the descendants of Bowley um, has been an advocate and a fan of ours, and we really appreciate um, her and her family's legacy in Bowley. And we want to make sure that whatever we have that is a template for success here, that we immediately transfer that to the next community that we want to go into. And that will very likely be Bowley. And then we're looking at uh, Kentucky, uh, Lexington, Kentucky. So my contact information, you can reach out to me at seemeatthenewlavilla.com. If you would like to donate, if you find value in this a little bit and would like to give, that is absolutely appreciated. We are so grateful. And if you would like to share it as well, that will be absolutely appreciated. We're so grateful. One of the things that we are doing for this education series is that we do have our newsletter on LinkedIn called Lost Fortunes Lasting Lessons. So we're talking about, how wealth was created at the turn of the century and what happened to the wealth of some of the individuals who were able to beat the odds coming out of some of these very same communities and the legacies they were able to create. Fast Growth, Small Margins is a narrative micro documentary that we're creating for entrepreneurs. And so we're hoping that, just mixing up um, the community that we build, but all centered around economic development, past and present, and impact investing will really, create this new mindset of celebrating and honoring our main streets and how we can together build the community and the economy that we want everyone to enjoy. So thank you all so much. I will look for any questions in the post and in the chat, and I will see you all next week. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.